I'm really happy to introduce to you Max Lund. Many of you already know him. And Max is going to talk to us about the Cambodia Corp that he had started or is involved in, and the projects that they do over there. Carol, his wife, is not going to be on the presentation, but we're going to give her credit because she took all the pictures, and that's what this is all going to be about. So Max, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can start I also want to say that Max would like to go through the presentation, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll open it up for questions, and you can turn your mics on at that time. So we'll look forward to the presentation. Thanks, Max. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Let me start out with, I'll put our logo up. This is the logo of Cambodia Corps, our organization. And
hey.
All right. Now, how am I going to? How will I advance that?
You should be able to take your cursor to the, move it up to the, right there. It's the little arrow.
Okay. I don't see the arrow, but it says next.
Yeah, then that'll click, go to the next photo then. And
okay. All right, here we are. Well, Cambodia Corps is a educational charity that's licensed here in the United States and also in the country of Cambodia as a non-governmental organization, or NGO. It was begun by a guy by the name of Tommy Daniels because there were many veterans of the Vietnam War that wanted to give back to Montagnards. And to best explain the Montagnards, in this first map of Southeast Asia, it shows the central highlands, which encompasses not only Vietnam, but Cambodia and Laos. And that's where the home of the Montagnards were, the mountain tribes people who were very much a part of our efforts in Vietnam. They were very much loyal to us. And in many of the epic battles that were fought, they fought alongside of us, they fought with us, they fought for us. And so many veterans have a real affinity toward the Montagnard. I can give you a real quick quote here from a man by the name of Mike Binge, who is a Foreign Service officer that was captured and held as a POW for 5 years, and now works as a human rights advocate for the Montagnards in Southeast Asia. He says in his quote, the Montagnards of the Central Highlands were recruited by the US to fight Vietnamese communists during the war. Some 61,000 Montagnards out of an estimated population of 1 million were used as surrogates for the US forces and fought alongside Americans in epic battles. In so doing, they rescued countless Americans, including pilots, air crews, and others. More than half of the Montagnards' adult male population was lost fighting with and for the Americans. Without their sacrifice, there would be many more names on that somber black granite wall in Washington, D.C., the Vietnam Memorial. And that, in a nutshell, explains why many veterans are wanting or have wanted to do over the years something for the Montagnards. And that's why Cambodia Corps was started, because at the end of the war, many of these Montagnards fled into Northeast Cambodia. And so the program was started by a guy by the name of Tommy Daniels, who did all the hard work of getting the licenses and then going up into the northeast corner of Cambodia. Let me show you that. So those two provinces in this map, Ratanakari to the north and Mandalkari to the south, are home to about 100,000 Montagnards. It was their tribal homeland before the war, and now they're concentrated in that area. To give it a little more perspective, that blue line to the left is the Mekong River. So we're right up in that northeast corner. And when Tommy went there, he decided that the best way he could serve the Montagnards was through education. And he developed a program that's pretty simple in its concept. It's to find the poorest and brightest kids that you could find that would be motivated to want to use their education to help their own people. And that's exactly what he did. The reasoning behind this is an old special forces concept of force multiplication. If you can get a highly trained and motivated person to take on a project, they'll have an outsized effect on that project. They'll have influence beyond just what one person could have. And so that's why he centered his program around education rather than any other thing such as handouts. It's a hand up rather than a handout. So that's where we operate, in those two provinces. And what we do is we try to recruit the most disadvantaged that we can, that certainly would not have any chance of going on to high school or college, in turn for their promise to use their education to help their people. So let me just go, I'll give you a couple slides on showing Americans interacting during the war. Often we would have one or two Americans accompanying several Montagnards on different types of operations. The loyalty was in both directions, obviously. Many of these guys did a lot of the most dangerous operations. And now, all right, here is what some of the villages looked like in the 60s and 70s. A couple of village shots. You can see even then they were quite poor. And this is something that has not changed in 50 years, is the roads to the villages. They're often in the rainy season, they're impassable. Well, yeah. Well, okay, the road I was showing you is, as I say, somewhat often some impassable during the rainy season, but our manager, who does a lot of the hard work here in this program, is the one that does the research for us. So he will travel those roads out to those remote villages to find students who are capable of going not only through high school but college, and would commit to being an advocate for their people. And so he will go out to the villages, and each spring I will accompany him when we go over to Cambodia, and we'll do a home visit. We'll talk to the parents, we'll talk to the student, and then he will interview the student in depth. And we ascertain that they, in fact, are very poor, and that they're want an education and that they'll commit. And we do have an agreement, a contract, if you will, that we enter into with the student that if we give them a college education, they will in turn use that education to help their people, that they will return to their province, that they will use that education to benefit the Montagnard people in their area. And so far we've had great success with it. So we use teachers who give us recommendations. We've now been in the business since we had our first graduate in 2007. So we've been in the business now for 13 years. And so we have graduates out there who are looking for kids for us. And now we have expanded somewhat in that in the northern province for Tanakari. We have a room or a house that we rent for high school kids. And so there's only one high school in the entire province, and that's in the province capital. And of course, in that area of the world, young girls are in danger if they're on their own. And so that house becomes a safe house. And so in this tiny house of, it's probably 30 by 30, less than 1,000 square feet, we house 18 high school girls and support them and provide safety so that they can attend high school. And in that time when they're going through the high school years, we're able to ascertain if they do in fact have the ability to go on to college, and if they were interested at all in using that education to help their people. And at the same time, down in Montagnard province, the southern province, we have the majority of our graduates are there, and they will recommend kids to us. And so each year we'll have 4 or 5 kids graduating from high school that are capable of passing the high school education or the high school exit exam, which is really the college admission exam. And in those kids that do make it through, we have a second rented house in Phnom Penh, which is the capital of the country, and that's where the colleges and universities are located. And so those students that are able to pass the exit exam and want to continue on, we'll sponsor them with a scholarship to come to Phnom Penh, to our rented building there, which is basically what we call our student center. It's where our manager has an office, and it's like a dormitory and with common rooms. And again, it's a safe place. And so the students jump on a bicycle and go to class every day and work through their college years. And once they graduate, then we help them go back to their province and try to match them up with organizations that are also doing work like we are, other NGOs, Western NGOs. And the reason that we encourage them to go with NGOs is because Cambodia is a very corrupt country, and we hate to see that their first job is with someone who's corrupt or lazy. So by pairing them up with other NGOs, Western NGOs, they're exposed to a much better work ethic. Some of our students have become teachers, and of course that we encourage that because the Montagnards of Southeast Asia are the most illiterate and have the most health problems in all of Southeast Asia. And so by training our kids to either be teachers or health professionals, or community organizers or veterinary technicians. We help them to really do more for their people disproportionately than if they just simply had a job in retail or business. And that's another thing that I wanted to be sure to bring up, is that while this organization started out as a means for veterans to give back, it's also evolved into something much more, in that by helping ethnic minority to help themselves, we're helping that ethnic minority then preserve their culture. And in doing that, we're helping them to preserve the ecosystem that they depend upon and preserve the rainforest that they're part of. And we're doing this through educating girls, which is also a very worthwhile endeavor anymore. And the girls, in turn, by becoming teachers and advocates and healthcare providers, are helping their people through health and education, or improving health and education. So this project has become, it evolved into much more than just simply GIs wanting to give back. So now we have students that are out there who are in work, different professions, helping their kids, such as a teacher who's not only a role model in her village, but she's touching 30 plus kids every day and being an example for them. Or a recent graduate, a gal by the name of Kat, who I wanted to show you her house. It was pretty, there was nothing to it. It was just a hut. But at any rate, she got herself through high school by working for the local Catholic missionary as a cook, and in turn got a high school education out of it. So we picked her up and put her through nursing school. And so she's now working for the Catholic Charities health clinic, as using her nursing skills there. And this year when I went to check on her, I was talking to her manager, who said that in the year that Kat has been working for them, the number of ethnic minority and the number of Montagnard people coming to the clinic has more than doubled, because the word is now out in the villages that there's someone that not only speaks their language, but is trained in medical skills as well. So another example of how our kids are being disproportionately effective. Two other graduates I'd like to mention, a gal by the name of Shanhei, who was a biology major and intending to be a teacher, but hired in with a group out of North Carolina called World Hope. And she is now pressed into service in the pandemic, in that she and another graduate are going house to house in villages, doing health information regarding the pandemic and what people can do to protect themselves. And so they're using their training and their language skills to reach out to people who would never otherwise be able to learn about safety precautions that have to happen during this time. An example, this spring, I had asked our manager to go further out into the boondocks to see if we could reach further into some of these remote villages to to recruit more kids to be examples. And he found a gal that is in the 10th grade and brought her into our high school program. And we asked to go see her village, and she went along with us and acted as our guide. This gal is a 10th grader and speaks 5 languages. I was just amazed at her desire to help her people. Her mother is widowed, and so her whole reason for wanting to work hard in school is so she can support her mother and her 5 younger brothers. And she wants to be a teacher. And so I said, you know, what'll happen if you graduate from high school, but you're not able to pass the teacher's exam? She said, I'll just simply wait for a year and take it again. She said, that's all I want to do is be a teacher. So this gal, if she can make it through the testing, is going to be sponsored by us, no problem at all. She has the drive that it takes. She's now taking on a 6th language. She's learning English because she knows that that's going to be important for her. And the way she's paying for her tutoring is by cleaning houses and pulling weeds in people's gardens. So I'm looking at her as the poster child of our organization in the future years. So those are some of the examples of the kids that we've helped that are going back and doing the very thing that we asked them to do, use their education to help their people. I suppose I could have a few more examples, but maybe it'd be better to open up to questions at this time. Sorry about not having my wife's great photos. I'm sure I'll hear about that.
We'll try to keep you out of trouble. Maybe nobody will tell her.
Yeah.
So if we've got any questions for Max right now, I would ask that you go ahead and unmute your mic and you can ask that question. Just let's try to not talk over each other. Do you have any questions?
I have one more example that just came to mind that I want to share. Is we had a young man who became a veterinary technician in Montagnard province, and straight out of school he hired into World Wildlife Federation. I'm sure everyone's seen their logo. It's the panda bear. And World Wildlife at the time was doing an inventory of the jungles in that area. And by doing that, what they were hoping to do is if they could establish that there was X number of different kinds of wildlife, they would persuade the government of Cambodia to set aside that land for a national park, which of course would benefit our tribes people who depend upon the jungle for their way of life. And so our young veterinary technician in his first week with World Wildlife was asked to accompany several scientists out into the jungle. And they went out into the jungle and the scientists showed him this big cage that they had. And he said, well, what's that for? And they said, well, we want to catch a tiger so we can start establishing the population of tigers here. And our young kid looked around and said, tiger doesn't live here. And the scientist said, well, but we thought if we put some raw meat here in the cage that a tiger would come and we'd capture it. And our kid looked around again and said, but the tiger doesn't sleep here. And he then said, why don't you do what my father and grandfather do if they want to catch a tiger? And the scientist said, you know how to catch a tiger? And within a few minutes, they had him with a pocket full of money on a motorbike heading back to his village to hire a tiger hunter. And so within days, the cage had been moved, and the tiger hunter that our student brought him was able to capture a tiger for him. And as a vet tech, he was able to sedate the tiger and take a tooth sample and help in the study. And so it just shows that our kids on their home turf with local knowledge can be a real benefit to a Western NGO that finds themselves in strange territory.
I think that's some really interesting stories. I think what you're doing to help the citizens over there to advance their opportunities is pretty amazing. I guess my question is, I realize you served over there. How long did it take you to get this organization up and running and really start being able to help the residents, the citizens?
I did not start it. A man by the name of Tommy Daniels did. I joined him shortly after he got it going, but it took him at least a year to get the licensing from the government of Cambodia, to get his 501c3 here in the United States, to go up into Montagnard province and meet with the Minister of Education and establish a safe house that students could stay in. He got that established by 2003, and he had his first high school graduate in 2007. So we've had kids in the college level program since 2007. I joined at that time and was on the board of directors in 2008. And then 2 years ago, when Tommy had to retire because of medical problems, I've taken over, or 3 years ago, I've taken over. So it's been a long, slow process. But we're small. We remain small, but we're effective in that we take a lot of time in screening our kids, and then when they do graduate, we try to help them as much as we can to guide them and make recommendations for them to get into hiring into NGOs or places where they'll have influence. Obviously, if we steer somebody into education, they simply begin teaching, so that's where their influence begins, or nursing. But the ones that have become, let's say, a community organizer, takes a little more strategy in finding them the right employer. But some of our kids now that have been out there for a while in the workforce have really evolved into being in key positions. We have one in Montagnard who is now on the district council. So he's got an influence in policy making.
Max?
Yes.
What do you do about the language? Have an interpreter?
I do, yes. And quite often, Marin, our manager, has to use our students as interpreters. But one of the things that we require of every one of our kids is they learn English. Simply because English is the language of business, and they're going to use it sooner or later. So we encourage it and we help them. And a lot of times we'll provide tutoring if we can for kids that Most of the universities, colleges and universities in Phnom Penh require English lessons for their students. But if it's not, then we'll try to help with a tutor.
Is there just the one over there, Max? Or with all the different provinces or areas, does it vary?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Well, I just wondered if it's just the one language that they're working with, or the different areas, do they speak different languages?
Different languages. So many of our kids will have their tribal language and maybe a couple dialects of a neighboring tribe. And then, of course, they have to learn the Cambodian national language, which is Khmer. But they learn that in their school system beginning in elementary school. And then, of course, they learn English in high school and college. So our students, really our graduates, have a lot to offer an employer, because not only do they know the local language, the national language, but they also bring English to the table as well. So they have multiple skills going in.
How many people are involved?
How many students have we graduated?
Yeah, that are involved with all this.
We have, at this time, I believe we have 48 graduates, and we have 3 girls who are trying to finish their coursework over the internet right now, so they'll graduate sometime in the near future. Cambodia, like everywhere else, shut down all of their schools in March. So many of the schools have had to get pretty innovative to finish out the semester. And in fact,
Max, Doug Pugh here. How does he make a contribution to Cambodia Corps?
Cambodia Corps, we have a website, cambodiacorps.org. There's a way to make a donation there, or here in Alpena, to 411 West Washington, my home address, Cambodia Corps, care of Max Lund.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Doug. I like that.
I'm
going to plant you in the audience more often.
Max, this is Susan again. That leads me to a question. I'm wondering, how do you raise the funds? And you said you're a small 501c3. So how do you raise the money to support these programs? Because this is the first time I've heard of your organization.
Well, we still have a very loyal following of veterans who form the core group, but as I said, we've developed to the point where we're touching on so many bases where people want to help. With the environment, with an ethnic minority, with educating girls, that we're beginning to bring in others who either stumble on our website or learn by word of mouth. And so, and you have to understand our American dollar goes a long way over there. Our high school girls, we give them each 1 bag of rice a month. So that's a $10 bag of rice that supports them for an entire month, and they scrounge around for their own vegetables. Occasionally we'll buy them some duck eggs or cooking oil, things like that, but we're on a pretty slim budget. When we put a kid through a year of college, it's tuition, books, fees, a bicycle, blanket, school uniform, toothpaste, toothbrush, and a meal, 2 meals every day. That's $1,600. That wouldn't be a month's worth here in the United States, but over there, our dollar goes a long way.
So you can put a student through college on $1,600?
Yes, for a full year.
For a full year.
Yeah,
Wow.
That's everything: room, board, tuition, bicycle.
Oh my gosh,
Hmm.
it's amazing.
And a bus ticket back home on school break.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And the best part is they are so grateful and proud of what they're doing. We watch these little girls come from a remote village that's a 13-hour bus ride to Phnom Penh, and they're coming from a village that's of maybe 300 or 400 people, and coming to Phnom Penh, which is the size and population of Chicago. And needless to say, they're intimidated, terrified. But every year, as Carol and I go back to spend the winter with them, and we stay in the building with the kids, we see their confidence grow. We see these little girls develop self-assurance that's just amazing.
Oh, Max, you mentioned so much about the girls. Are the boys really involved also?
Yes. In fact, that's all that Tommy was able to recruit in the early days were boys. And so it's disproportionate. It was all boys to begin with. In fact, it was very difficult to find a girl in the early days because the only girls that would be in school would be ones in which the parents were well off enough that they didn't need them at home to work in the rice field. But that's slowly changing. The kids are putting pressure on their parents to let them go to school. And so we're all girls because we're trying to bring a little parity here. All the early years were entirely boys. So they were disproportionately represented to begin with.
Max, this is Dick Bremer. Is the economy primarily agrarian and out in these areas?
Out in the remote provinces, yes. And often it's subsistence living, simply living from one growing season to another. A lot of those communities are losing their kids to the sweatshops, if you will, in Phnom Penh, where you have these huge factories making clothing and tennis shoes and whatnot. If you're a kid in the retail in downtown Phnom Penh, if you're working in a store, you probably make about $50 a month. If you were in a clothing factory, you might learn about $75 a month. If you are a young man in the construction trade, you might earn $90 a month.
Max, how's the COVID affected people over there?
Not very badly. Most of Southeast Asia were clamped down early on. In fact, when we arrived in January of this year, everyone was in masks already. In fact, the neighbor Vietnam had shut down their borders to foreign travel in January. When we left in March, there were only 12 cases in all of Cambodia. And as of a couple days ago, they only had 122 cases, and they were all foreigners that had come in, either foreign workers or Chinese tourists. So Cambodia's come out of it pretty well.
They have any deaths?
None that I know of. I read the Phnom Penh Post every day, so I can see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So do we have other questions for Max? No? Okay. Well, Max,
I'm sorry my photos weren't available for you. I had some really good ones.
well, maybe we'll get an opportunity to see them again in the future, and you'll be able to show them off.
Well, actually, I hate to interrupt, but many of the shots that I had put together were you might find on, or will find on our website. There's a lot of student not profiles, but pictures of our students at their home or being interviewed by our manager. So you might check out the website just for the fact that you can actually see some of the kids that I've been talking about, that I'm pretty sure we've labeled them with their names.
Okay, that's a great idea. And that's CambodiaCorp.org?
Yes, Corp's pronounced Corps, like Marine Corps.
Right.
Yes, but CambodiaCorps.org. And it has our history. It has quite a few pictures of current students and graduates, and some village shots, so a chance to get a little taste of where these kids come from.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's well worth checking out. Thank you for this is a great story, and thank you for taking the time and trying to learn this new technology, which I know is a little bit of a challenge for you, but now we're going to get you off and running here. And I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about what you've done with Cambodia Corp and what's happening as a result of that. It's some great things. So we thank you very much. And unless we've got any questions from anybody else, we're going to go ahead and end this session. And I want to thank everybody for participating today.
And I do as well. I'm always glad to talk about my passion. So thank everyone.
Yeah. Thank you very much.